This week we have a double Parsha, Parshas Acharei-Kedoshim. Now focusing on the second Parsha, Parshas Kedoshim, the Parsha begins with a statement, as Rashi says. This statement, Melamed shenemar Parsha zu b'hakel. This Parsha was said in front of all the Jewish people. Literally, Moshe gathered the entire 600,000 men between 20 and 60, which equals, according to the censuses that I've seen, somewhere between 2.4 to 3 million people. Moshe gathers all of them to tell them a statement. What is the statement? Kedoshim tihiyu, you should be holy, ki kadosh ani Hashem lekechem, because I, Hashem, your God, am holy. And this is the statement that Moshe tells them, followed by many specific mitzvahs, like ish imay v'aviv tiro, you should fear your mother and father, you should keep Shabbos, and as the Parsha goes to continue mentioning many of the mitzvahs. But the introductory statement is Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani Hashem lekechem, and this statement is said specifically during Hakel. Now, why is it specifically that this statement of thou shalt be holy is said in front of all the Jewish people collectively? So there's a lot of nice vertelach, a lot of nice lessons that come from this before we get to the main crux of what I want to talk about. One of them, for example, is what does it mean to be holy in Judaism? In other religions, sometimes holiness means to remain separate, removed, exalted, become an ascetic, or a person of hisbodedus that just goes internally, removes yourself from other people. However, what Moshe is telling the Jewish people over here is how Kedoshim tiyu, you should be holy. However, you should be holy within Hakel, not by removing yourself from the society, but the holiness of Judaism means to connect better with Yidden around you. How do you know how holy we are? How do we know how connected to Hashem we are? When we increase in Avos Yisrael and Achdus Yisrael, that is actually the symptom of holiness. It's not the opposite of holiness to remain connected to people. Fakert, that's what holiness means in Judaism. Or how do I know that I'm actually at a state of Kedoshim tiyu when I'm in Hakel and I feel connected with everyone else? That's one perspective. Another interesting perspective is when can you say that every single Jew is Kedoshim tiyu, is holy? Sometimes it's only when you see them as part of the collective. As some Sfarim say, that when you look at specific people, sometimes it just seems that they only have personality flaws and nothing good to them. However, they're a chelik of the Jewish people. And when you see the Jewish people and all this, everything good they stand for, and how they're God's nation and all the goodness they bring to the world relative to other nations, all the light and kindness that Jews collectively bring, and this person's a chelik of that klal. So sometimes it's hard to view the individual and to say, I see his holiness. But to see him as a chelik of the klal, over there I could see his holiness much more clearly. I heard a nice line about the difference between a Jew and an anti-Semite. You ask an anti-Semite about his opinion on the Jewish people. Oh, they're terrible. What about your neighbor? Okay, he's different. Ask him about a different individual, he'll say how they're different. Ask a Jew what his opinion on the Jewish people are. Mi kamcha Yisrael, Yidden are so special, so holy. Who's like them? They're God's people. What about your neighbor? He's an exception to the rule. So the question is, how do you view the collective? The anti-Semite has a negative feeling about Jews collectively, when they could find some exceptions. The Jew views Yidden and Yiddishkeit positively. All Jews are holy, Kedoshim tiyu. Yeah, there might be exceptions when you look at them under a microscope individually, but as part of the collective body of the Jewish people, Kedoshim tiyu, that's why Kedoshim tiyu was said by Hakel, so we view everyone through the scope of seeing them as part of the collective entity of the Jewish people. However, that's not what Rashi says. Rashi says, why was this Parsha said by Hakel? Well, all Jews were there, because Reiv Gufei Torah Tluyin Ba, most things in Torah are dependent on it. So that's why it was said during Hakel. Now, what does that mean? Because Kedoshim has many mitzvahs mentioned in it, but it doesn't have the most mitzvahs of other Parshas. There are other Parshas that have more mitzvahs. And Rashi doesn't even say that most things in Torah were mentioned over here. He says most mitzvahs of Torah, most of the body of Torah is dependent on this Parsha. So what does that mean? This is so important. It had to be said to all Jews collectively because most of Torah is dependent on this. How exactly are we meant to translate that statement? One of the explanations is like this. What's the most important thing someone needs in life in order to succeed? And when you boil it all down, it is a positive self-esteem and a positive self-image. If someone sees himself positively, then they'll produce positively. If someone views himself as smart, then they're going to achieve intellectual success. If someone views themselves negatively, then they will not succeed. Ultimately, most of our life, our relationships, our success in anything, and our moods is dependent on when I look in the mirror, Do I like what I see or do I not like what I see? Do I see something positive, something dignified and worthy of esteem, or do I see something negative? Perhaps self-esteem is the most important thing that one must have in order to have a good, rich, meaningful, successful life. And perhaps, or at least the Rebbe seems to say this, in Tafshin Memches, that's where I've seen it, and I've heard this idea echoed as well. The point of this Parsha, Roiv Gufei Torah Tluyin Ba, the 613 mitzvahs. However, what gives someone the capability to be able to live as a Jew as necessary? It's very hard. It's very hard to do everything that Hashem wants. It's very hard to always be so disciplined and to always literally live by the schedule of Torah, live by the 613 mitzvahs of the do's and don'ts. How am I able to do that? And the answer is Kedoshim to you. If I could view myself as holy, as someone of esteem and dignity, as a chelik alikam imal mamish, I'm a walking slice of God, piece of God. What is a Jew? A Jew is literally, you have rays of infinity, the heavens spread apart, a ray of godliness comes to this world. What does that look like? A Jewish soul, a Jewish person. Imagine I really viewed myself like that. Imagine I viewed the Jew next to me like that, and I was actually able to articulate, hey, you're God's, an expression of God's royalty to this world. If we could actually emotionally feel this way and view ourselves this way, then Judaism becomes possible. But as long as I view myself as a shmata, worthless, and nothing special to me, then I'm going to be too paralyzed in order to be able to properly fulfill Hashem's will and to do the Taryag mitzvahs. So what's the most important thing that a Jew needs to know? Kedoshim to you, you could be holy because I, your God, am holy, and you're connected to me. We're connected to Hashem. Yeah, we are connected to Hashem. And just like Hashem is holy, therefore we could be holy because we're in His image. And if we could understand just that one thing, then the rest of our lives become possible, and the rest of our Yiddishkeit and success in general becomes possible. This seemingly is what Rashi is saying. It's important, you need to say this to Hakal, because every Jew needs to know one thing. Kedoshim to you, you are royalty. And when you know, if someone is born into a royal family, if someone's born into a dignified position, they act, and it's easier for them to act better. Why? Because they know their actions have weight, they're important, and they're dignified. They have esteem. And when someone has esteem, it's easier to act in that light. And so a Yid has to develop a Yiddish self-esteem. And parents and educators need to cultivate that into their students and to their children as well, to see them as a literal piece of Hashem, as something holy, as someone holy. And when you actually view them and say, hey, you're esteemed, you're important to this world, and you have something special, you're a reflection of God to this world, the more that could be felt by the person himself, the more possible Torah mitzvahs becomes. I'll share a story. I believe I shared this once before, but it's still very powerful. There was a Jew coming close to Judaism. He was a Kohen, and he was starting to get close to his Chabad rabbi and take on more Torah mitzvahs. But there was one thing that was hard for him. He was in a relationship with someone that a Kohen is not allowed to marry, and he didn't know what to do about it. He said this was his hardest mitzvah. I can't break this off. Till the rabbi convinced him to go to the Rebbe, and he had a yechidus with the Rebbe, met the Rebbe in his room, and the Rebbe told him as follows. The Rebbe says, they say about me that I'm a Talmud Chacham, that I know a lot of Torah. And the Rebbe pointed around his room and said, even if I learn every single book around this room, master it intellectually, chew it over, make it part of my life, no matter what, I cannot become a Kohen. That's just not a gift I was given. But the Rebbe turns to him and says, but you were. Hashem made you a Kohen. That level of holiness is something that was gifted to you, not me. So why would you want to mess with that? And this person shares that was something that was able to make him break off with this woman. To break off with that woman was hard. Tell him to break off with the love of his life. How am I supposed to do that? But tell me how dignified and how special my kahuna is. The fact that I'm a kohen, show me how special that is. Then automatically I would want to say no to something else becomes easier, because now it's easier for me to say yes to my kahuna, because I realize how special and how important that is. And if we could magnify that to allow ourselves and those around us to live by this, literally, we are special, we are unique. Our Yiddishkeit makes us something very, very important and godly. And we have that in us already. We don't even need to create us. That's our identity. Our identity is a chelik alikam imal mamish. The more we understand that, then the more our lives and our Yiddishkeit become possible, successful, radiant, and rich and real. Have a great Shabbos.